Marketing That Works is the podcast for business owners who want to move their brand forward so that they can bring in more sales and clients. I'm Danielle Harris, and I'm bringing you what I know from more than 12 years of experience in traditional and online marketing. I have created marketing strategies for businesses of all sizes, from multi-million-dollar corporations to early-stage online businesses. Remember, some marketers chase fads. I believe in mastering the fundamentals. In today's online marketing space, there are so many things that you hear. You hear people making big promises. You hear people talking about what their program results are going to be. But is it legal for them to say what they are saying? Today, I'm bringing in a legal expert, and we're breaking down all the things that you should keep in mind as you are marketing your business. What things are legal to say? What are things that the FTC are saying that you need to keep in mind as you're promoting yourself and your business? So today, I'm bringing on Yasmine. She is the founder of coachesandcompany.com, a platform offering accessible legal solutions and lawyer-approved contracts for entrepreneurs so that they can make sure that they are protecting their businesses. And we're going to get into all types of topics, and I really want you to make sure that you are taking note, making sure that you are listening, because what we're going to talk about here is so important. Legal issues in marketing is something that I do not hear talked about nearly enough, and so I'm so excited to be able to bring you this episode. So take notes, get ready, sit down, listen. It's captivating, it's so good. So let's get into it. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to have a special guest here today. The topic that we're going over, it's so crucial, and I was just talking a little bit before we started recording. Like, this topic is also so timely for people in the online space. But before we get into it, I would love for our special guest for today to introduce herself for everyone.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I'm Yasmine. I'm a business and intellectual property attorney. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. I'm the founder of a company called Coaches and Company at coachesandcompany.com. We are a media company providing access to legal tools and business tools that help you do business better. So specifically, we provide access to lawyer-created contract templates that are ready to use, and they're accessible without the need to hire an expensive attorney. And so many times that's the first place that folks start when they're selling services or products online is you need a contract with whoever it is that you're working with. And so, yeah, I'm operating in that world, and I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship. I am a bit of a nerd when it comes to business and the law and technology and the intersection of all of these things. And so I'm quite fascinated with it. And I think that it's just a world of opportunity, and it just removes the barriers for so many people and provides a path to financial independence for many that prior did not have that path available to us and, many people around the world. And so, yeah, it's a pretty cool time to be in business, and I'm really excited to be doing the work that I'm doing.
It's such a necessary work. There are so many people out there that need that type of help, especially as they're starting to grow their businesses. They're deciding that, okay, I want to have this thing, I want to grow this, and also need to protect it. And from the legal aspect, like, that's one of the top ways that you can go about protecting your business. So it's such important work that you do. So I brought you here today as talking about protecting and protection of yourself and your business. The top thing that I really wanted to talk about are just like the legal aspects of marketing and promising things in your marketing. I know that there are a lot of times people say, business coaches are saying like, hey, you want to make sure that you're making these great promises, something that's going to really attract people in and get people to turn their heads and notice you and stick out from the crowd, which is great and fantastic. But then there's also the legal side of things, of what exactly can you promise. And I know that we were talking a bit before, like, what are the parameters of making promises in your marketing? What can you do? What can't you do? What are the rules when it comes to doing that type of marketing?
Yeah, so there's a lot to be said on this topic because I hear you. You do want to make your marketing messaging and written copy and your advertisements, everything that you are putting out into the world to attract your ideal customer, you want to make sure that it's something that does, catch their attention and intrigue them, interest them, get them to listen to what it is that you have to say and hear you out in terms of what your offer is to see if it's right for them or not. So yeah, I'm all for that. I'm, not here to knock marketing. And I know that there's like a running joke that marketing and legal are, the departments are enemies. And I think anybody that has worked in a larger organization, I imagine, can understand that and see how that can very, very easily be the case. And when you're on a much smaller scale where it's a, solopreneur, independent consultant, independent coaching professional, maybe own an agency or a freelance-based business, you're overseeing marketing and you're overseeing legal. And so you've got to make sure that you're covering your bases and that you're not doing something on the marketing side that could have legal implications and that you're totally unaware of. And so when it comes to making promises and embellishing your, marketing language or materials, you certainly want to err on the side of caution. So yeah, you mentioned, Danielle, there are some business and marketing, educators and coaches and consultants out there that are talking about, really say everything that you need to say in order to get your customers to you. And I would say, yeah, I can agree with that. However, with it not crossing the line into, of course, it simply not being true, or not being a result that you can actually guarantee, that you can directly influence as a part of your rendering of the service. So if you're working with a marketing professional who is providing marketing services to you and can control the outcome of the deliverables, that is very different from somebody who is educating on, and maybe providing coaching around achieving a very specific health-related result or a very specific financially tied result. Those outcomes are heavily dependent on a number of factors, including the input of the client and the efforts of the client. And so the service provider can't really provide many guarantees in certain instances. So you want to be mindful of that when you're promoting your offers, when you're promoting the services that you provide, even as you put forth different case studies. If the results are not typical or something that you can guarantee or all but guarantee, you need to be careful, my friend. It's a gray area for sure.
Right. No, because there are a lot of things that are saying like, hey, the people that work with me, they make 6 figures. They do this. They lose 30 pounds. They are going to have better relationships with their partners, depending on wherever it's at. That's the goal. That's what people want. And so I think a lot of times, and I've said this too, like, when you're talking about the things that can happen, like you're speaking to the possibilities of what can happen, but you're also saying that at the same time, can you guarantee that if you do at the end of this 3-month container, at the end of whatever period of time, that you are going to have paid off 6 figures of debt? Can you guarantee that you are going to have 20 pounds down? Can you guarantee that your marriage is going to be better at the end of the day? And you're saying like, you cannot promise that is a thing that's going to end up happening at the end of the day. And so when you're talking about from a legal standpoint, when you do want to balance being able to say like, well, like if they do follow all of these steps or if they do all of these things, then it's a possibility that they can have. Maybe they won't get all of it, but maybe they'll get some of it. What is your recommendation of what people can actually do and say that's going to have themselves legally protected? Is it disclaimers? Is it like, how exactly do you suggest from a legal aspect of them still being able to say, here are the possibilities that are out there while still covering their butt?
Yeah, I would say it's about being very straightforward and stating that specifically, that these results are not guaranteed. These results are not typical. These results are heavily dependent on the input of X, Y, and Z and a variety of factors, etc. And being very direct about that, as opposed to really putting forth all of the, the 0.5% of the clients that you've worked with that have achieved, maybe, yes, in fact, incredible results and have a great outcome in the time since working with you. But is that an outcome that you can actually guarantee to even most of your clients? Maybe not. And if it's not, then you need to be really direct about that. And you need to be mindful of how it is that you are positioning your offer, positioning your business, your marketing messages, and your marketing materials, and whether it's on, in a written format, a visual format, on your website, on a podcast, whatever it might be, there are opportunities to include those disclaimers around, I cannot guarantee these results, or these results cannot be guaranteed. They are dependent on, list what it might be dependent on in those circumstances. And yeah, be very clear about that.
So is this something that you suggest should be not only in contracts of listing out, like, because typically I see a lot of times, at least in my contracts, it says, I'm guaranteeing you that you're going to have this type of access to me, you're going to get X amount of sessions, and you're going to learn this particular process. This process goes through, and that is a process that can help you do XYZ results. Is that something that you recommend saying and doing within contracts and within your marketing as well? What is when you're consulting with other business owners, what is it that you typically say that they should have on their sales pages and their marketing, things of that nature?
In my opinion, I think it's a best practice to have it on both within the contract itself, where you explicitly state what it is that you can guarantee and that they are receiving within the scope of this agreement, and what it is that you cannot guarantee and what variables exist within that could affect whether it's outcomes, results, deliverables, etc. And also on the front end and on the consumer facing side, your public marketing efforts. So including that in the footer of your website, your sales pages. If there is a particular offer that you're promoting, being really clear in your marketing materials, on the copy that is on your website, on those sales pages, being really clear as to where the limits of your services lie and what realistically you can guarantee to the client. Even if, like I said, you have these great testimonials to put forth and case studies with past clients, that's all great, but be really clear about what it is that you can actually guarantee, because that, from an ethical standpoint, of course, and from a legal standpoint, we have a recent rule by the FTC related to marketing efforts and using testimonials and using, results of others and their reviews in your marketing. And we could talk more about that for sure. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're familiar with that and that you're familiarizing your team with those concepts as well. Because if you're the business owner, even if you have a marketing team internally, or if you're outsourcing that and have an outside agency or contractor providing those services to you, if the marketing is your business's, you stand to be liable if there are any issues. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're getting really familiar with what is okay and what isn't, and make sure that you have all your bases covered across every digital platform that you're operating in.
Now, you mentioned a little bit of what I also wanted to pivot a little bit into is testimonials and client results and case studies. So there are a couple sides of this. The first side is legally, how can you go about using that to promote yourself? I know you alluded to FTC most recent ruling. Can you, one, talk about what that ruling was, and two, talk about exactly what is it that you can and can't do and things that you should take into consideration as you are talking about results that your clients get?
Yeah, so briefly, the rule had two main components. I guess you could say that most businesses in the digital world should definitely get familiar with. And it's not anything too extensive. And some might think, okay, well, that kind of seems like common sense. Like, I've already been operating in that way. But there are also some steps that you might need to take if certain things come up in the future. So let me share, and then we could talk about what that might look like. So one is the rule prohibits the sale or purchase of fake reviews and testimonials, or using and allowing for fake reviews and testimonials to appear on your website or on a review platform. So that means if you, of course, if as the business or the company is creating fake reviews and publishing on their website, that's a very clear violation of this rule. If you are hiring a company to generate, AI generated reviews to publish on Google Reviews or Yelp or your website, also in violation of the rule. And I think most people would think like, yeah, obviously, like those are pretty clearly, not okay. But even if there is a review that appears on your website or on, one of these platforms like Yelp or Google Reviews that you believe is fake or you believe is generated by AI or some sort of bot, you have a responsibility to take that down and have that reported if you become aware of it. So if you're unaware of it, then, no stress there. It's unlikely that you'll be held responsible for that. But if your company becomes aware of it, you need to take action against that and make sure that, there are no false reviews or fabricated reviews about your business, about your products, about your services. Another one that I can see how some people might find themselves in this situation unknowingly or unintentionally, but it's related to requiring what they've called clear disclosures when company insiders or employees or even relatives of employees and owners of the company are creating reviews and publishing those reviews. So maybe if you bring somebody in, a relative, to create a video, UGC style of your physical product or even of your service, that needs to be disclosed. That's a material connection to the company, and that person, their interests and their biases are very different than, a true consumer that's totally unaffiliated and has no special interests in the company. And so, that's, like I said, I feel like that's something that might, in the past, some people might have engaged in that, and maybe it wasn't from a malicious standpoint, but that's something that's going to change now, and you are required to make those disclosures. And if you don't comply with rules like this, the FTC can pursue legal action against your business, and from that there can be different fines and penalties and things like that.
And, really what I'm picking up here is, not that, I think a lot of people are trying to act in good faith, but I think another thing that it's really bringing light to is that these are cases and instances that the FTC are looking at more closely and starting to crack down on a lot of things. And so I think it just makes us all want to be aware of the fact that, are we doing things in a way that is, ethical? I know that's a big term that's going around, but are you acting in a way that's really above reproach? Another thing that I would love to talk about is just talking about your clients and privacy from that standpoint. I know one of the big things that we're always told to do is to go and talk about your clients, talk about the wins that you've been able to get for them. I know the one thing that we talked about before is disclosing, like, is this the norm? Are there other considerations that we should keep in mind as we are trying to get testimonials, as we're trying to get case studies, things that we should keep in mind before we collect them and as we're presenting them?
Oh my gosh, excellent question. I hope people think about this, actually. You asking this question restores some of my faith, because this is major when it comes to marketing and using, client experiences and reviews and case studies, and it brings into question the issue of using somebody's likeness in your marketing materials. And so, there are definitely some considerations that you want to have in mind before you ask for a review, when you're collecting it, afterwards, and in the way that you're using it, and in what form you're using it. And so, of course, you never want to, use a client's results or story without their consent. I think it kind of goes without saying, but it's also worth saying, because it happens sometimes, and it could very easily happen when somebody gets excited about their client's results and then they start sharing it because they think, oh my gosh, I want to help more people achieve these kinds of results. Let me just share this with the world. But I have, even personally as a consumer of, I would say, B2B services, I have seen B2B service providers talking about their clients' results. And because I'm in their sphere, I kind of know who they're talking about. Like I can make that link. And sometimes I've seen it be, information be shared that makes me question whether or not the client ever really consented to this being publicized about them and their company and their, business operations. And so, that's something you want to be mindful of, is ask for consent to use it. And maybe they say, okay, it's okay to use it, but I just want it to be anonymous. Make sure you're modifying certain facts about the situation to make it anonymous so that the client is not easily identifiable. And then if they do consent and they're fine with it, I would say best practice is get it in writing, even if it's just an email. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full contract, consenting to it. But if you are going, an extra step or a few extra steps, and for example, filming a video case study and interview, and you intend to use that case study somewhat extensively in your marketing materials on your website. Maybe you're going to use it to run paid advertisements. There are a number of ways that you could use a piece of what is, essentially intellectual property in that format for marketing purposes. And so in that event, where there's a little bit more production, a little bit more of their involvement, and a lot more of their presence and likeness, I don't think it's excessive to say, get something in writing and something that they're consenting to you using this video for marketing purposes, for advertising purposes. And that way you're protecting your own interests as a company. You don't find yourself facing allegations of misuse of their likeness or, profiting off of their likeness. Get those consents and make sure the necessary disclaimers accompany those case studies and promotion of those testimonials, of course. Those go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, and you talked before about going through, talking about it, getting that permission. I know a lot of times people say like, well, I don't necessarily like say their name. Is it still okay for me to go through and talk about that? Because I didn't give any specific details. I just said like, oh, hey, this client of mine that I'm working with, they were able to sign this client, or they lost the last 10 pounds, or they, just set this great boundary with their family, which was a huge win for them. But they didn't say their name. They didn't say any of those things. Is that something that is allowable, or is that something that you're still like, you should probably still get permission and consent for? What are your takes on that aspect?
Yeah, great hypothetical, because that's totally realistic. And I think if you ask most people, they would say that they would want to be able to do that without the consent of, or needing to request consent from the client. And in this instance, I would say just change enough of the immaterial facts of the situation to where you're creating something of a hypothetical, but of course, while maintaining truth of what it is that you're using for marketing purposes, right? So like, don't fabricate results, of course. That I think goes into like, you're definitely operating in the not good area like that. I think the FTC would take issue with that if you're, creating false reviews of your own. I think that could be interpreted as that. But I would say change, the industry that they're in, the city that they're in, either change it or remove it entirely from the situation to where if that client were reading it, they could not even say with certainty that it was them. It might be another client. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. And I think that's the scenario that I see a lot of times with things. And I think to what you said, I think as people are trying to make promises and they are talking about the results, and so they're trying to anonymize it, and then they're also trying to promise things, I think that's where people start to get into a little potential gray area. It's just like, well, like, they could have theoretically, or it's just kind of like an amalgamation of like a couple different clients. So it's like, from a marketing standpoint, it's just like, because I could do this. And so theoretically with these couple, like it's not from this like all right, like I'm out here lying. It's more of just like I could jump to that conclusion that this is something that I could
Yeah.
do type of aspect with these actual results that I got for people in this scenario that I can envision myself doing. I can write about this, and you essentially are saying like, oh yeah, this is a review that, yeah, interesting
It
enough.
de- I suppose maybe I was a bit quick to say that could be interpreted as a review because there's no one way that everybody will execute this type of
Mm-hmm.
message, right? This type of marketing message of I'm creating this hypothetical client or I'm telling a story about this hypothetical client that is based on, based loosely on past clients of mine. Maybe it is this combination of, various client circumstances. Um, but I think that it comes down to what are you telling the client is either, a possibility or a guarantee, and are you being direct about that? Because yeah, I could talk about, maybe I am able to achieve all of these incredible results for clients, and if that is true and I have, I'm willing to provide something of a guarantee to the client to achieve those results, and yeah, talk about that all the time, but if you
Yeah.
can't, you need to be direct about that. It's not, clearly the FTC takes issue with it, and there are certainly ethical issues within talking about the results and the results and the results and the results, and then selling somebody on getting these results. And the reality is, you can't really guarantee these results.
Yeah. And I think the biggest takeaway that I'm hearing here is what can you guarantee versus, what
Yeah.
have you, just like as a possibility. And
Yeah.
so if you're thinking about anything, you're listening back over to this episode, um, if you take that into consideration, I think you'll start to market yourself in a great position. But I want to thank you so much for leading this conversation. I think it's just so
Thank you.
important for people to take into consideration as they are creating marketing for themselves, for their business, to grow as they're consulting with other people to help them create marketing. So I appreciate you so much. For the people who would love to connect more with you, can you please tell them how they can get in contact, different ways that they could potentially work with you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. First, let me say thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure and it's been great getting to know you. I would love to connect with anyone who's listening. If you are on the internet, I'm hanging out probably wherever you are. I exist there too. But I want to share a resource first and foremost for anybody who's hearing this and thinking, okay, I need to step it up legally. I need to get some legal protections in place. I have some questions about different legal stuff. We have our legally launch guide and a free legal checklist that you can download at coachesandcompany.com/legally launch. So you can download that and check it out. It's a really great resource, a great starting point. If you're like, I don't even know where to begin there. And yeah, you can check us out at coachesandcompany.com. And like I said, personally, I'm on pretty much every platform on the internet. So you can find me there. Just search my name and say hello. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. And we'll, of course, have that linked in the show notes. Thank you
Yes.
so much. This was such a great conversation. And I hope you
Thank you.
all go and check her out. And thank you for being on here today.
Thanks so much, Danielle. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye. If you want more marketing that works right in your inbox, head to the show notes and sign up for the email list. You'll be the first to know how you can work with me on mastering your marketing.